Welcome to the Inspired Action Podcast. This is where we have motivational, inspiring conversations and interviews that we hope you'll enjoy listening to. If you're interested in creating more balance in your life, understanding your 5-element energetic nature, finding the path of greatest ease,
or releasing the baggage of this lifetime and discovering ancient alchemy that can help you fly in your life, join us and other inspired actioneers on this alchemical transformational journey.
Welcome to the Inspired Action Podcast. My name is Jay, and this is pod number 47, and I'm here with my co-host, as always, Lita Herman.
Welcome back, Inspired Actioneers. So this is the last podcast of Season 2, and we are just finishing up a series about the 9 palaces. And today, it's time to put all of that theory into perspective.
Hey, wait, you didn't say you're so excited.
Right.
You always...
I do, and I am. This is so exciting because this is where the rubber meets the road, and we get to really put all this stuff into perspective in a way that you can utilize it in your life.
Yeah, I love this part too, because this is when you can take the 9 palace theory and to start to remove the obstacles in your everyday life just by looking at it and seeing some of the stories that you tell yourself.
Yes, I agree. This is the fun part. And we've been spending the past year or more going over so many concepts, so many different things we all need to understand. The 5 elements, the 9 palaces, alchemy. And we just want to remind people who are just joining us that listening to the early podcasts are helpful. So you can learn the lingo of what we're talking about because we've covered a lot of Chinese theory and philosophy.
Yes, and that's a lot to absorb, and I mean that in a good way, not a boring way, but it's a lot to learn. It's almost like learning a little bit of a new language.
Yes, and I hope we did that with a touch of humor and a lot of lightness. And, you know, our goal is to make this really accessible. And our hope is that we can all have a dialogue about these ideas. And today we're going to talk about the obstacles you're perceiving in your life and how to be like the Hindu elephant god Ganesh, who is called the remover of obstacles.
Yes, but in this case, it's going to be the remover of your own obstacles.
Yes, you be your own Ganesh.
Yeah, so get your own Ganesh on.
Get your Ganesh on. So before you get your Ganesh on, we're just gonna go and talk about our usual things. We have this great app, and we're doing some new meditations coming out. And I just want to remind people that we're going to be going back to using iTunes and Google Play to listen to the actual podcast episodes, not in the app. So if you love the app for that, I'm sorry to say we had some technical issues. So we are going to
go back to old school, listen to it through iTunes or Google.
And the app is going to be strictly for our meditations. And I think it'll be easier for people using it for meditations to find what they need. And anyway, so that's the app news. And as always, we invite people to join us on Facebook. We have an Inspired Action Podcast page, and from there you can find our group. And you just need to answer one secret question to join our group.
It's very easy.
And also, you can email us.
It is not the meaning of life. What is the meaning of life? You may enter.
But you've already told them the meaning of life.
It's true.
What's the meaning of life, Jay?
42.
Okay. And so if you have a question, we are doing a series coming up in season 3 on happiness.
Yes.
And if you have like a topic or a question you'd like us to cover
or someone that you'd like us to interview, we're also going to be doing some interviews coming up.
We're really excited. We've got some great ideas. So we've got some good stuff coming up.
Yeah, so stay tuned. But for today, you got a lot of energy over there today.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm like docile compared to you. You are revved up and ready to go. So let's go.
All right,
let's talk about
go.
the 9 palaces. You know, and the way I look at it when I'm working with clients is the stories. What are the stories that we're telling ourselves? You know, we all have a story. It's our identity. A lot of people have, I don't want to say an identity crisis, but they have all these stories and they kind of overlap each other on the 9 palaces. They need a little course correction sometimes. You know, we'll start with like the career, the first palace. We have a story. Everyone has a story about the career. It's the answer to, what do I do for a living?
Oh, God, that is the ultimate question. You go to a cocktail party.
Hey, what are you doing? How are you? What do you do for a living?
Yeah, what do you do for a living?
What do you for work? What do you do for work? What
How
do you
many
do for a living?
people out there hate that question?
Yeah.
Like you, Jay, you hate that question because you could answer it 10 different ways. You do
Yeah.
so many different things.
I usually say I don't work at all. I have fun.
There you go.
Then
And
they look at me like, oh boy, unemployed. No, not even close.
well, I like what you said, Jay. It's really about stories. We tell ourselves stories. We tell each other stories. We have a story about our wealth, for example. Like maybe it's, I make good money.
Or maybe a not so good story is I don't have enough to do what I want.
Yeah,
Mostly it's money to do what I want.
right. So unfortunately, that's a common story for a lot of people.
Yeah, we also have stories about our health. I would do this, but my health is not good. Or maybe I'm in really good health, like I'm in perfect health story. That's a good one. But everyone tells stories about each palace.
Yeah, I mean, we work at the clinic, and we see a lot of stories of struggle around health.
Yeah, so let's start with the health then. Let's just say you go in and you go in to see Lita and you don't feel well. What's your story about that? Is it my partner left me? I feel lonely, so I stay up all night. I eat sugar, I drink, I maybe indulge too much. I'm binging on TV all the time, and now guess what? I'm sick. I don't know how to take better care of my health, but if my partner had left me, so blame, maybe I'd be taking better care of myself. That's a story I've kind of heard in different variations.
Oh, that's a really common story. It's a sad story when you think about it. It's a really sad story.
And the story that is self-perpetuating, the real truth is it's your story. The question is, are you using that story as an excuse not to live your life or to do things that you really don't want to do?
Or you should be doing, and
Yeah.
you're not doing it.
And stories. I pull out stories from people all day long.
It reminds me of this woman who had a large sum of money stolen from her by an employee. And then, even though she still had tons of money and was doing really well in her life, she lamented every day that this money was stolen and thought about all the ways it was limiting her in her life. And then her business, which was still doing great, she was still making money, but it was like she had a hole in her life that couldn't be filled. To her, that money was her nest egg, and she felt like it was limiting the rest of her life. And, perhaps she was thinking about her retirement or whatever, but she just couldn't get past it.
Well, we'd have to go back to what did that money represent? What did that person represent? Did that person violate the trust? Did that person, do something that was so, I don't know, offensive to that person that they lost respect? Maybe it was about respect. Maybe it was about honor. Maybe it was about trust. And they were just using that to really carry this heavy, heavy, heavy burden. For how many years did she have that problem? Challenge.
I'd say 10 years.
10 years.
She held on to that.
Wow.
So, Jay, we have these stories. So what you're saying is the first step is to identify the stories.
Yeah, you go to those, I like to call it the source point, different than the other source point.
Yes.
But this is the source point of the story. Like, where did it start? Why did it start? And it changed you. It affected you from that day forward. Can you see how you were before you started telling the story?
Yeah. And we've been having you do homework all the way through this 9 Palace section of the podcast. And you've been writing down answers to a bunch of questions. And we asked you to ask yourself some really
Pop
tough
quiz.
questions.
Answer the story of your life.
Yes.
Now.
So I imagine some people you've already been self-examining.
Yeah, that's really good to really start to look at. When you see the 9 palaces, I have them listed up on my big board at work, and you start to look at them and you say, career palace. And I say, well, just tell me what you think about your career. How's your career been? And then what's that story?
Yeah.
Is it like, I've never really had that job. I've always been overlooked. Or I've had some people said, it's never been an issue. I've always been a rock star. I've made tons of money. I had a really good life as far as my professional career's gone. That's a story. That's a good story.
Yeah. So for today, which of the palaces
But
really
wait,
stood
on
out?
that good story, it also could be I worked great, I had good jobs, made a lot of money, but I never really had a human connection. I never got close to my spouse. I don't really know my children because I worked all the time.
Yeah.
Career was the driving force in their life. I've had a couple people with that. And then you're like, So then we move down to the relationship. So you tell the story. So right now we're just looking at the stories, and then you start to understand the 9 palaces. So what are the stories that you're telling yourself that hold you back from really living the true life that you want to live?
Right. So let's just say they pick one story, like
Okay.
one palace that particularly stands out.
Yep.
Just
Let's
for the
go
sake
with
of
relationship.
today.
The big ones are relationship, health, and wealth. Those I say over and over. They're like dominoes. Okay. Here's an example. I would like to lose weight, but I can't exercise because my partner doesn't like to do the same thing that I do. They don't like a gym. I like to go to gym. They want to go outside. I like to be inside. They like to do, classes with a lot of people. I like to do solo. So you've lost interest. You've lost your motivation. You blame your partner
Right.
for not going to the gym or exercising.
Right. And then what are you doing? You're sitting at home and not doing what you really want to do.
And then you say, what the hell doesn't matter anyway. So you eat things you don't want to eat. You're not really doing the self-care as far as maybe you're not meditating. Maybe you're not connecting with nature. Maybe you're not journaling. You're not doing any self-cultivation. Your self-confidence is down. Your self-esteem is down. You're sitting around binging on the Netflix, looking for the next thing to blame on your partner.
Right. Right. So I was also thinking that you could also be blaming health on your other palaces not working out, like your travel palace.
Sure,
maybe.
I would love to travel the world, but I can't. My legs are bad.
Right.
I got a bad knee. I got a bad hip. I can't walk like I used to walk.
Yeah.
I can't run. I can't get through the airports. And I can go on and on and on. I've heard every story that you can tell, and really, that's just a story. That means we start to unravel that. Usually it's about fear. Or they also say, I don't want to travel because I don't have money, or, I don't have time, another resource,
So it's fear, guilt, shame, and blame.
Yeah, definitely.
Those are the things that are holding you back from what you truly want to do.
Totally. That's it. Podcast is over.
All right, let's help.
We always drop the stuff early on what the answer is. Now we have to go back and explain that. But no, seriously, that is a lot of it. We often talk about fear, and that fear is almost always related to death and dying. So you start to unravel that, and you start to unravel that, and you start to unravel that. The guilt, the shame, the blame, all those can be tied into fear. Fear-based reality.
Exactly. So, Jay, let's just take the rest of this podcast to really think about some like self-alchemical coaching techniques. Like what could let's have people think of a story, maybe stop the podcast for a minute and do a little writing. Write down what is your story about, maybe your relationship or your health.
What do you really want to
wealth?
do in life that you're not doing? And then think what are the first 3 reasons why you're not doing it?
What are you waiting for?
Right. What are you waiting for? What are you blaming it on? What are you waiting for? What is the real reason why you don't want to do what you're doing or not doing? And what are you telling yourself? It's probably 2 different things if you start to unravel it a little bit.
Yeah. So
Stop,
take a moment.
Stop believing the stories that you're telling and really look at what is going on in your life.
Right. Okay. So they're going to go do that. And
Right.
dun, dun,
Dun,
dun,
dun,
dun, dun,
dun, dun, dun, dun.
You do it better.
Dun, 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 dun. Misspent youth watching really bad TV. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Ding.
Okay. Welcome back.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about
What's your answer in the form of a question, Lita?
My answer?
The ding.
Oh, what's my answer to more question? In a form of a question. Wow.
That's Jeopardy. Have you not watched
Jay,
Jeopardy?
what are the 3 principles for self-coaching?
Well, oh my God. On the fly here, trust in yourself.
Okay.
Stop believing your own crap. And maybe be kinder to yourself.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
That was
that was like, pew!
okay. I do think people are really hard on themselves, and they often do not see the good in themselves, and therefore they can't be nice to themselves.
They're like their biggest enemy.
Yeah, totally. They are. They kick their own ass. So they think the world is kicking their ass, but guess what? Ding, 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 ding. They're kicking their own ass.
It's like, how can you erase the stories that you're telling yourself?
Well, sometimes you're not even aware of it. Until you start to self-examine.
Yes.
You could go years and decades and your whole life believing stories that are not true. Not true. Yeah. I don't know. It's really, I think the big ones, if you're listening to this podcast and you want to start working on some things, on your own, just looking at a little self-examination, money, health, relationship, look at those. I've always wanted to be with a person, or I've never had any good luck with romance, or I wish I had a closer relationship with my kids,
Okay,
You
well,
can go on and on and on.
all right, Jay. So let's take an example. Let's really kind of work out how you do this magical work you do, this alchemical coaching, and help people with looking at their own stories. Be the Ganesh for their own stories.
Yeah, remove your own obstacles. Well, it is a process. And when I meet with people, the first time is usually a few hours, and we go kind of fast and furious depending on the person. But we go through a lot, and we don't tackle every palace, but we try to see where are the ones that are really holding them back. So I know which story you want me to tell about the inventor guy, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this person came to see me, and they were an inventor, very, very smart person.
Engineer,
yep. He had this potential of being this big, big, big scientist, engineer kind of thing. And he got onto a side project of his own, and it just took forever. And he kept tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it. I'm talking like years.
like an app, right? It was an idea for an app.
It was like a really cool invention app. And he just, didn't work. He just worked on this app. He just worked, and he went through a couple relationships. And then, so when he came to see me, he really thought it was a career and a wealth palace. Like he doesn't have
So he had
money.
A story about it.
He had a story
what was
about
the
it.
story?
His story was that his career would take off once his app changed the world. Okay, but he didn't have enough money to fix it. He didn't have, and his partner wasn't giving him enough money. They didn't have enough money, and this was like the second or third relationship that he had been through. His parents had given him money, and it was just going on and on and on. And he thought that everyone was kind of like almost giving up on him, and this whole app thing was not. Now it was starting to look like it wasn't even going to come to the market, and so now we have 10 years of this person's life, and after a while, we started talking. I started pulling out stories. Come to find out, it was a relationship.
Wow.
Yes, and also it was definitely a health palace. It was also career and wealth. Don't get me wrong. And probably a little bit of all of them because everything was affected. But he was pouring his heart and soul. His health was starting to deteriorate. He wasn't eating good. He wasn't exercising. He wasn't doing all the things that he was doing before. And he used to do a lot of things with this partner before, and he was only focused on the negativity of this project. It wasn't coming out fast enough. Every time he was about to launch it, something would break or some bug would be found. And then they needed more money. And so then the relationship got kind of tense. Then they just weren't like getting along, and it just was like story after story after story. So
and it was all focused on the career and not the relationship and health issues.
Yeah, and when I started to see these signs that it was not the app or the career or the other person, that it was them, then things really started to unravel because they had zero accountability. They were not even looking even remotely that it was them.
Wow.
It was
all blame.
It was all blame. It was a big revelation, and it went all the way back to childhood almost, where his parents had, perhaps, I'm not saying it was all his parents, could have been a teacher, some influential person started this path.
Wow.
And so it almost became like he became dependent emotionally, financially, physically, everything on another person instead of himself. So we unraveled that.
And you said that he had another side job that he could make a lot of money doing, and he wasn't doing that to support.
It was like a tech writing kind of job that he had for a long, long time. It was super easy, and he made good money, but he hated doing it, and it was almost beneath what he thought, but it was a good side income, and he could have probably used that to fund this project, but instead it was almost like he was digging his heels in to do this, even though he had this great job. It was like a part-time job that made a lot of money, almost as much as someone would make full-time, but it was still not enough.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was when we talked about maybe pursuing that for a while to get this thing up and running. Oh, that was not going to happen.
Wow.
That was like poking the eye.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's about a better relationship with himself?
Yeah, he did not like himself. He didn't like the person he was. He probably had trouble his whole life with his self-image, self-esteem, self-confidence, self-worth.
Right.
He had everyone told him since he was a young person he had huge potential. He got scholarships. He got his education paid for. Everything
Right.
handed to him.
This is probably a common story. I'm thinking about another business person who, back in the last sort of recession, 2007, 2008, was launching a really successful business. And then boom, that crash came. And then that person just blamed the economy on everything to the point where he didn't even try.
Right.
Like he already assumed that the economy was so bad that his business wasn't going to be successful.
That's
So
a story.
therefore,
That's a story. So don't even try.
yeah, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The economy's bad, therefore he doesn't do anything to actually market the business. Therefore, he fails, proving that the economy was bad, not that he didn't actually.
Self-fulfilling prophecy of doom.
Of doom, yes.
Yeah, and they probably would come in thinking that it was a career issue.
Yes.
I can't sell this thing. I can't move forward in my career. I can't do this. I can't because the economy's bad, and I don't know what else to do. And
It's almost like that Marianne Williamson quote about our biggest fear is how powerful we are and how strong we are versus, I'm not quoting it exactly, but instead of, basically our biggest fear is being successful.
Yeah.
So maybe in his case, that was his fear.
Yeah. Maybe we can have the sound quote of that in there, put in right here.
Okay.
Because our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
We can ponder that because it really is a story that just got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah,
and if you stop pulling them away, pull this, pull out, and you have to be, we didn't mention the most important thing. And Lita, this is you. You always say they have to want to change. Mm-hmm. So that person, if they don't want to change, they're just going to listen and go, another person against me.
Right.
But they have to want to change. So if you're listening and you want to change, do these things. Start to take a look. What do you really want to do?
Maybe you could explain again that concept of accountability. I remember in the early podcasts we talked about it, but that was a very profound concept that you taught me. And, I hadn't really been looking at how my own accountability or my lack of accountability was stopping me from basically writing books.
And not only that, but expanding your business and doing other things that you wanted to do. You kind of held that as a roadblock for many things creative.
I was blaming everyone else.
Yeah.
And not actually taking the action that I needed to take.
I used to say, I don't have time. Mm-hmm. I'm working too much, and your career was rocking and all this stuff. And you had a family and you would do, So I think the accountability, sometimes it's hard to look at your life. And when you've been saying for a long time, I'm not doing this because of X, Y, or Z. If they've been thinking for a while now, I'm going to say a couple of years, or it could be longer, or it could be less, about not being able to do something because of another person or a thing or a job or a boss. And then we start to look at it, or you start to look at your life and you realize that, it might be you, or it might be your actions or lack of actions, or just something that you're in control of versus someone else. That takes a little while to adjust. And that is accountability.
Yeah, ultimately, we are responsible for our own lives. Yeah. So if we have blame going on, then it's likely we're trying to avoid looking at our own accountability.
Yeah, and I do think sometimes that your mind does that to protect you in some events.
That's true.
Some situations. But, if you have been saying for the last 10 years, I want to live in a warmer climate. But my partner won't go. I want to live in a warmer climate, but I can't quit my job. I want to live in a warmer climate, but, I want to wait till I pay off the mortgage, or I want to live in a warmer climate till the kids go off to college. You're living all these years. Where's the accountability?
Right.
Where are you saying, you're saying, I want to live in a warmer climate, but,
right.
And then you're blaming all these other people.
Right. So we could say that a fundamental question to ask yourself is, what are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for?
Do you need permission?
Sure. Or here we go. I give you permission to live an awesome life. Go ahead and do it.
Okay, Jay gives you, all the listeners out there, Jay is giving you permission
That's right.
to live an awesome life.
There's a golden pass to go have the life that you want to live.
It's like that quote, be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah, Gandhi.
Or
rock on.
how about be the change you want to see in yourself?
Yeah. Take a step into, I say this often, step into your own life. What's the worst that could happen? I don't know. You have a great life. You go have fun, make a lot of money or not.
Or how about our favorite sort of slightly changed quote? There is no try, only Wu.
Yeah.
Wei.
Wu Wei. That's right. Say that again.
There is no try, only Wu Wei.
Yes. Yes.
That's
So to get in the Wu Wei of your own life, get out of your way to get in the Wu Wei.
There you go.
How about that?
I
huh?
love that. Get
about
out
that?
of your way to live in the Wu Wei. That's going on a t-shirt.
That's going on
Boom.
a t-shirt. Boom. So think about it. If you're not to blame, seriously, if someone else is really truly keeping you down, then figure a way to get out of it.
Yeah.
But if you're the one that's keeping you down, let's figure a way out of that too.
Yeah.
Step one.
Which includes guilt and shame and fear.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I often like to think about no blame, no shame, no games.
Yeah. Games with yourself.
Yeah. Head games, mind games, heart games.
All right. So,
Wow, that's a lot of games.
Yeah, this is about opening up to the truth in yourself and giving yourself permission to be what you want to be, do
so
what you want to do.
Get your Ganesh on and remove those obstacles, remove
Yeah.
those stories. And you know what? It's okay. Take your time, but not too long because the
What are
clock
you
is
waiting
ticking.
for?
What are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Go have fun.
Okay.
That's a great place to end. Thanks for listening. And if you have any questions, send them to us at questions@inspiredactionpodcast.com.
Yes.
We do listen to all of them, and we might give you a really cool t-shirt.
Yeah. If you ask a question,
ask a question,
and we put it on the podcast.
You will get a t-shirt.
Yeah.
All right.
All
So
right.
remember, there's no try, only Wu Wei.
Wait.
You've been listening to the Inspired Action Podcast, and you've reached the end. Woohoo! Why not celebrate a little bit and click that subscribe button right there? We love having you with us on this journey, and we want it to continue.
You can also rate and review this podcast. And if you have already, thank you so much. We read all reviews, and your reviews help other people find this podcast as well. You can also be a part of this podcast yourself by submitting a voice recording message and emailing it to us at Lita@inspiredactionpodcast.com or Jay@inspiredactionpodcast.com.
And if you want, you can join our Facebook group or follow us on Instagram.
Join us next week for another Inspired Action conversation. And thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening, and remember to hug the dog.